This is not a drill something just detonate behind the scenes in Allen Park, and you're hearing it here first, before it filters through the rumor mill and turns into recycled talking points. If you're new around here, hit subscribe and tap the bell right now, because on Lions News Fan Report, we take you into the decisions that actually moved this team, not just the headlines that chased them. Coming off that statement win that reminded the league who we are: aggressive on fourth down, violent at the line, calm in the storm the calls started, the whispers sharpened, and a choice landed on Brad Holmes' desk that could tilt the roster in two directions at once. The headline? Craig Reynolds is drawing real interest. Not gossip, not a friend of a friend, actual teams asking Detroit what it would take. And that's where the heartbeat meets the calculator. Because Reynolds is the culture guy you trust in December when the bruises stack up and the weather turns. But he's also the kind of steady veteran who becomes a reasonable chip when your depth room starts flashing new answers. Sean Vaki has been stringing together trust snaps on offense and special teams. The kind coaches circle in film sessions. Decisive, secure, fit in the structure. Jacob Sailors came up hungry and fearless, turned limited chances into momentum plays, and put new pressure on the return job. That's how this league works. One guy's reliability makes another guy's ceiling easier to bet on. And suddenly what looked crowded in July becomes negotiable in late September. Do you keep the safety net because you're a real contender? Or do you convert surplus into a day 3 pick you can later package when you hunt a bigger fish? That's not Madden. That's how playoff teams think in a long season. And while the backfield conversation heats up, the other flashing light sits on the edge. Let's not sugarcoat it. The defense's next jump happens when someone consistently shares the burden with Aiden Hutchinson. Marcus Davenport's early season setback interrupted the rotation plan. Al-Qaeda Muhammad's motor and timing have been a needed jolt, but the unit still lives in that weekly question. Who's the second constant in the rush? When you're serious about January, you don't keep asking the same question for 18 weeks. You answer it, then you underline it with depth. That's where opportunity meets timing. Every year a pass rusher with first-round traits and a complicated injury file becomes available earlier than expected. Sometimes it's a veteran who needs a new runway. Sometimes it's a former blue chip rebuilding his value on a prove-it arc. Detroit's advantage is identity plus flexibility. The scheme is clear under Kelvin Shepard. The snaps are valuable, and the cap is healthy enough to absorb a calculated swing without touching the core. If the right archetype shakes loose link, first step that threatens the edge, an inside counter you can trust, and a willingness to live in the details of our rush plan, you make the call, you don't wait for a bidding war. And if the medicals don't sing, you walk away with no regret, because this locker room's confidence is built on what it does every day, not on splashy gambles. Back to Reynolds, because this matters to the room. He's the kind of human who makes Tuesdays better and Sundays calmer. Moving a culture piece is delicate, which is why the threshold is high. You only do it if the depth is real, if Vaki's workload trajectory holds, and if Sailors keeps giving you field position oxygen without ball security scares. If those conditions align and a late pick is on the table, you can justify the move. You convert a good story into future flexibility, and you still protect your floor with a committee that fits your offense's math. If any of those conditions wobble, you keep your guy, period. Remember what this staff values: availability, trust, and the ability to execute the plan at full speed. On offense, the plan right now is beautiful in its cruelty. Two-back illusions that make linebackers hesitate just long enough for the crease. Motion that steals leverage. Sam Laporta as the emergency exit that never looks like an emergency. Amon-Ra St. Brown as the North Star when the down and distance gets muddy. Jameer Gibbs as the stress test. The defense must pass pre-snap and post-snap. John Morton isn't trying to be anyone else. He's building off the bones of what worked and layering the counters. You only earn by doing the simple things with ruthless consistency. That's why the fourth down aggression feels like identity, not a coin flip. It's not bravado. It's the offense saying, We own the math in the moment, and the sideline believing it. Defensively, Shepard's group just put out tape that travels, coordinated rush, coverage that knows exactly what it's protecting, and an attitude that doesn't blink after a bad play. That's what gives the front office the freedom to be patient and opportunistic at once. You can trust the plan while you search for upgrades. You're not shopping out of panic. You're shopping out of posture. Special teams quietly tie it all together. If the return game stays efficient, decisive lanes, clean hands, smart fair catches, you steal hidden yards in a stretch of schedule that won't hand you anything. And yes, the schedule is a gauntlet. A bruising front with an attitude. A road trip that tests your cadence and composure. And a primetime heavyweight that wants the stage as much as you do. That's exactly the kind of sequence that clarifies a team's appetite for a small, outbound move like moving a depth RB and a measured inbound move like adding situational edge juice. Here's how I'd stack the next 2 weeks if I were in the room. 1. Decide the Reynolds path based on health and roles. Not sentiment matters, but roles win games. 2. Call around the lead now, not later, for that pass rusher archetype. Establish price discipline and medical standards you won't violate. 3. Sharpen what already scares opponents. More condensed sets to force leverage decisions. More play action on middle 8 snaps when the game tilts. More simulated pressure looks that peel help away from Hutchinson without exposing the back end. 4. Keep the sideline communication crisp on 4th down sequences. Your identity is aggression, but your edge is detail. And 5. Protect the calm after big plays yours or theirs. That's where contenders bank points and pretenders bleed them. Let's talk locker room dynamics, because they're not a footnote. They're the plot. This group believes because it has earned the right to believe. When a team plays with that mix of swagger and clarity, hammer on offense, scalpel on defense, you don't rip out threads for the thrill of transactions. You make moves that fit the personality you've built. Shipping out Reynolds only happens if it extends that personality, professionalism, reliability, team first. Bringing in an edge only happens if the player's first interview answer is about doing his job inside a standard, not about chasing numbers. That's when a roster move doesn't feel like a disruption. It feels like an addition to the choir. So where do I land? I'd take the call on Craig Reynolds, but I'd set a bright line test. If the offer clears a reasonable bar and the depth proves real over the next week, clean medicals for the room, ball security, and decision-making stable in the return game, I convert surplus into a late pick and keep the door open for a future package. If the offer is a token and the depth hiccups, I'm closing the line and telling the room we're rolling with our guy. On the edge, I'm absolutely kicking the tires on an upside play, but only inside a strict risk frame, affordable, no long-term penalty, and a medical profile the staff can manage without re-engineering the plan. The identity we watched on display isn't an accident. It's a promise. You earn the right to be picky when your tape is dishonest. And that's what excites me most. Beyond any headline, beyond any hypothetical trade, the way this team translates its words into downs. When the moment gets big, they don't ask to be spared. They ask for the call sheet. When the league looks for reasons to doubt, they treat it like oxygen. That's the posture that turns September belief into January football. If you're riding with me, subscribe now, drop a like to push this to more Lions fans, and share it with that friend who pretends he's calm but keeps checking the injury report at midnight. Now, I want your take in the comments. Would you move Reynolds if the depth stays real and a late pick is on the table? And would you greenlight a targeted edge addition if the right profile shakes free? Or do you keep your powder dry and let this identity compound week over week? My opinion, said as a fan who's been here in the lean years and the loud ones, I'd listen on Reynolds under strict conditions, and I'd explore a low-risk edge swing, with a quick trigger to walk away if the fit isn't perfect. Because the real story isn't whether you make a move. It's whether every move you make keeps amplifying what this team already is fearless on 4th. disciplined on defense, and finally built to travel when the nights get cold.